Hi, this is Josh Marshall from TPM Media. It's Wednesday, November 12th, 2008. With the election now over, we're giving extra attention to the transition and looking at who President-elect Obama picks as he starts to fill out his administration. Now, along those lines, there's been a lot of attention to the possibility that's been floated, and I think it's more than a possibility, that President-elect Obama will keep Secretary of Defense Gates in his job at the Pentagon. Now, this has caused more than a little disgruntlement among Democrats across the country. If you think about it, President-elect Obama was elected more than anything over people's unhappiness with the direction of American foreign policy. Obviously, the economy became a big issue over the course of 2008. But U.S. foreign policy has been paramount. And the idea that President-elect Obama would keep the Secretary of Defense, if nothing else, just on the optics front, on how it looks, would seem to be a very odd choice. But here's some background that I haven't seen a lot of attention to, and I think it's critical to understanding why the possibility of a continuing appointment for Gates is being given such serious consideration. A lot of what it comes down to is this guy, Brent Scowcroft. As you know, he was the National Security Advisor under the first President Bush, and in the background, through much of the second President Bush's administration, he's been a key kind of behind-the-scenes player doing a lot of pushback against the big plans of the neoconservatives. If you remember, he wrote a key editorial in the lead-up to the Iraq War saying that he thought the whole thing was a bad idea, and this was seen as very important at the time because Scowcroft was known to be so close to Bush's father. Now, this has been pretty much outside the front pages, but Scowcroft has continued in that role throughout the Bush administration, pushing back a lot against John Bolton. If you remember, he used to be the ambassador to the United Nations, and also running a lot of interference, trying to keep Dick Cheney from starting a war with Iran in the declining years of the Bush administration. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind about Bob Gates. Fundamentally, Gates is a Scowcroft guy. Now, let's go through a few other names. First, retiring Senator Chuck Hagel. He never formally endorsed Obama, but he's been very tight with Obama going back over the last couple of years. He's gone on foreign trips with him, and he's really run interference for Obama among the Republican foreign policy establishment. Now again, Hagel very close to Brent Scowcroft. I'm definitely not saying that Hagel isn't his own person, but I've often watched him as a sort of a sign for the message that's coming out from the Scowcroft camp within the DC foreign policy community. Now, those are some key names. Colin Powell is also close to Scowcroft, and there's a lot of other people from that world who've been close to Obama over the last couple of years. So what's the big picture? Basically, going back through the course of this campaign, there's been a behind-the-scenes, almost totally not for public consumption, but ongoing conversation between the Scowcroft camp in the DC foreign policy community, which again is out of that old-school GOP realist school, an ongoing conversation, even a de facto alliance that you've seen between the Obama campaign and President-elect Obama and Scowcroft. And you see that coming out in things like the close relationship with Hagel, in the possibility of keeping Gates on at the Pentagon. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, that President-elect Obama may keep Robert Gates on at the Pentagon, is a topic we're going to leave for another day. But if you're trying to understand what's happening here, who the key players are, you have to look at Scowcroft and that community of DC foreign policy hands that are around him, and I believe are having a big influence on the idea and probably the reality of keeping Gates on for a year, possibly more, at the Pentagon. I'm Josh Marshall from TPM Media, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.